Hi everyone, Jane here. Thank you for watching today. I am going to be using some new acrylic paints. Yes, I know I recently bought some very inexpensive paints from the range, but I realised that I would quite like some more neutral and pastel sort of colours. And so I bought this set from Amsterdam, and it's a set of 12 sort of really mini tubes. So I thought it was ideal because I didn't want too much. The other tubes I got were quite big, but I wanted just a little selection for when I wanted to do a little bit of the more muted colours. So I am working today in the Dina Wakley ledger journal. Now I know previously some people get a bit worried when seeing things like ledgers being worked on. This is a reproduction of a ledger. It's not an actual real ledger, it is a reproduction. So it's one that was from the 1920s that Dina Wakley found, and she loved it so much that she had it copied and made into an actual journal. So the paper in it is specifically chosen to be used for mixed media, and it's really good with acrylic paints. Now I do actually use watercolors and lots of different things on it. It does buckle to an extent. I think it's a 180 GSM, so it's not a super thick cardstock, and it is not a watercolor cardstock. It is a mixed media cardstock, so it does buckle if you use lots and lots of mediums, but I have done that. I just have a band that I put around my book when I've let it all dry out properly, and to an extent it will dry out and unbuckle, but it's never going to be back as it was. So I'm just using a few of the colours, the sort of the yellow, the pink and the blue, a sort of primary range, just to add some colour to the background, and I watered it down because I wanted to be able to see that text still through. And I'm using the Collage soup book, Face It, which is my latest acquirement. Acquirement? I think that's the right word. Acquirement from the Collage Soup series. I love the Collage Soup books, and this one I was really keen on. So I chose that image with the three ladies with the umbrellas, and I didn't show it, but I did also find the page with the rainbows. Now I thought to myself, if you have rainbows, you usually have rain and you have sunshine. And so I decided to add some stenciling in the background, still using the paints. And you'll see I'm putting out a little tiny bit of paint each time. And I've got this stencil. I think it was from a magazine. I'm not sure what it was from, to be quite honest, but it's got like these little almost sunshines on, and it's got a full sunshine and a half sunshine. So I thought I would use them. And my idea was to have some variations in the colour. What I hadn't considered when I was doing that is once the paint was on the actual stencil, every time I was putting more paint through, I was just sort of re-pushing through the sort of apricot colour. So I think it's like a yellow, an apricot, and it was a Naples red, which I didn't overly use, which is the really pale colour, because I decided that actually the apricot was showing up the best. And then once I realised that I was just sort of keeping on pushing the same colour through because it was on the stencil, I did eventually think to wipe the stencil. So that is a bit of a tip there, obviously I didn't think of, is that if you don't want to keep getting that the same colour coming through, to give your stencil a little bit of a wipe and a little bit of a clean in between colours, so that you can get a different colour coming through. And there we go. There's me actually cleaning the stencil. So I'm using a stipply brush. I'm stippling a little bit, but I'm not putting an awful lot of paint on, so I am sort of squishing it through with a little bit of a swirly motion. As long as that's not causing the paint to go underneath, I do that sometimes just for the speed. So I sort of put that all over, and therefore now I've got my sunshines, I need my raindrops. And I have this stencil, again, I think it's a Crafter's Workshop stencil, and I have a feeling it's called something like Tiny Circles or Tiny Dots. It's quite an old one, and as I often say, I throw away the packaging, so I don't always know what I've got. And I've gone for this, I think it was called Greyish Blue or something like that, this colour. And I just wanted to add it sort of coming down as though it was sort of like raindrops coming down the page. So then I have my sunshine and my rain to help make those rainbows. They are very tiny little dots, so I'm sort of swirling it through rather than dabbing it, just for speed. Now, once that was dry, and to be fair, acrylic paint does dry really quite quickly, I wanted to place my ladies. Now, they were obviously close together on the actual page in the book, but I wanted to split them up, mostly because when you cut images out, sometimes you get that bit where it's, it was against the edge of the page. So like the left hand side of her umbrella was a straight line and her dress, so she looks cut off. So I wanted her to be on the edge of the page. And then I had cut out all these rainbows off one of the pages, just because I really liked them. And so I thought, how can I incorporate? And I thought they could be sort of like a bit of a border, but really sort of a grounding for them at the bottom, because when I cut the bottom of where their legs were, it did look a little bit strange because there wasn't like proper feet or shoes. So I've added those rainbows in. I did have to overlap them very slightly just to fit them so they didn't go over the sort of the crease of the page. You could stick them over the crease of the page, but it just makes it all a little bit more tricky. Now, I am using my Liquitex Professional Matte Medium, and this paper it's not as thin as something like a tissue paper, so it's quite robust. You can sort of lift it and move it, and if I get little wrinkles, I tend to just like squish them out more or less. And I put the medium on the top, on the bottom, all over, and as much as I can really, just to really put it, get it stuck firmly down. I knew I wasn't going to be adding anything like water-based mediums over the top, so I wasn't worried about adding any gesso or anything like that over afterwards. You might consider doing that if you know you're going to use mediums that would need a bit more of a primer to cling on to. So there is the bottom of my rainbows. And then I wanted a biggish couple of sentiments. And I suddenly remembered that I did have these Dina Wakley collage tissues, and I had some that had like square sentiments, but actually I found these ones, I think these were on sheets. And I found a couple that I really liked and I put them on. And what I like about these is that the tissue blends into the background. I've sort of felt like I needed to balance up the rainbows a little bit. So I just chose to go around this sentiment up here. I did think about, should I put any more on? But actually at this point I felt that was enough. It didn't need any more rainbows on there at this point. However, I did still feel that there was a big gap in the middle of the pages and that there was something missing. I needed to put something on. I didn't want to put any more focal points. I wanted it to be something in the background, but a bit more substantial than maybe some of the stamps I would normally use. So I went for this set of journaling marks by Be Crafty, and I will list everything in the description box below. And I just went for the three sort of colours that I used in the paint in the background. Well, not obviously the exact same colours, but a pink, a blue and a yellow. And I just added some sort of boldish sort of marks. So just very, very basic marks that I felt would go with the page, would add something to it, but not be too in your face, wouldn't take over from the main sort of part of the pages. So that's really what I did. Oh no, I didn't. I carried on. I've just remembered. I did feel that there needed to then be a little bit of black in there. And so I did then get my black Posca pen. This is the 3M, so it's slightly thicker one. And I decided that it needed some dots. Now I started off by being quite tentative with my dots, which is what I do tend to do. And I was like dotting them quite lightly. And then after a while, I realized that actually I preferred it when I gave it a heavier hand, and the dots became a little bit more obvious. So I added them on a bit more thickly. And then where I had done the really fine dots, I went back over and just enhanced them a little bit. So I think that was more or less the end of what I did for these pages. So if you have enjoyed, do please give this video a thumbs up. And if you haven't already subscribed, it would be fabulous if you could hit that subscribe button as well. And until the next time, bye bye.